There exists in the annals of political transformation no specimen quite so instructive nor so pitiful as Marco Antonio Rubio, a man who has performed the singular feat of conducting a public spinal extraction upon himself without the benefit of anesthesia. To witness his journey from righteous denouncer of Donald Trump to simpering courtier is to observe a masterclass in political cowardice, a kind of self-abasement so thoroughgoing that it would embarrass the most shameless of Renaissance sycophants. It was not so very long ago, a mere 9 years, which in political memory constitutes several geological epochs, that Senator Rubio stood before the American public and issued warnings about Trump that possessed, one must concede, a certain prophetic clarity. For years to come, Rubio intoned in March of 2016, there are many people on the right, in the media and voters at large, that are going to be having to explain and justify how they fell into this trap of supporting Donald Trump, because this is not going to end well. One might observe that Rubio himself now leads the parade of those requiring justification, though he has dispensed with the explanation portion of the program entirely. The man once possessed sufficient nerve endings to call Trump a con artist who would never get control of this party. He warned that we cannot allow a con artist to get access to the nuclear codes of the United States of America. He compared his rival to a third-world strongman and declared him the most vulgar person to ever aspire to the presidency. These were not whispered confidences to journalists or private misgivings shared over bourbon. They were full-throated public condemnations delivered on television and at rallies across the nation. And yet here we are, with the self-same Marco Rubio serving as Trump's Secretary of State, his acting national security advisor, and his reliable vessel for whatever position the dear leader happens to hold on any given Tuesday afternoon. Rubio traded his spine for a corner office and emerged from the transaction believing he had won. Let us be precise about what occurred. Trump, with his singular gift for the diminishing epithet, branded Rubio Little Marco, a nickname that achieved its devastating efficacy precisely because it seemed to penetrate to something essential about its target. Rubio, in a moment of desperation, attempted to beat the bully at his own game by making crude insinuations about the size of Trump's hands, and by extension, his genitalia. "He's always calling me Little Marco," Rubio observed. "He's taller than me. He's like 6'2", which is why I don't understand why his hands are the size of someone who is 5'2". And you know what they say about men with small hands? You can't trust them." This grotesque attempt at locker room banter from a man who had styled himself as a sunny optimist and policy intellectual was as effective as bringing a kazoo to a knife fight. Trump, naturally, addressed the matter directly at the next debate, assuring the American viewing public that there was no problem with any of his proportions. Rubio, meanwhile, had succeeded only in diminishing himself. The transformation that followed defies the ordinary grammar of political realignment. One expects politicians to moderate their criticisms when circumstances change, to find convenient off-ramps from their most inflammatory rhetoric. But Rubio's capitulation has been so total, so abject, that it suggests not mere opportunism but a fundamental vacancy at the core of his being. When asked by ABC News in 2024 about his former attacks on Trump, Rubio responded with breathtaking insouciance. It was a campaign. He compared his vicious denunciations to a boxer throwing punches in the ring, as though calling someone a dangerous con artist who should never have access to nuclear weapons was merely part of the game, signifying nothing, binding no one. A man who will say anything to anyone has, in the final analysis, said nothing at all. The trajectory is instructive. In 2013, Rubio positioned himself as a forward-thinking Republican, co-authoring the so-called Gang of Eight immigration bill that proposed a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. He stood at press conferences with Democratic senators, championed comprehensive reform, and made passionate arguments for policies that would allow people in the shadows to emerge into full participation in American life. Then the conservative base growled its disapproval, and Rubio fled from his own legislation with the alacrity of a man escaping a burning building. By 2016, he had the audacity to claim that the bill was never intended to become law, a statement so preposterously contrary to the available evidence that it constituted either a lie or a confession of the most cynical bad faith in recent legislative history. Now, he enthusiastically endorses using military force for mass deportations, a position so removed from his earlier stance that the two Rubios might as well be different people occupying the same ill-fitting suit. Speaking of malfunctions, one cannot address Rubio's political career without lingering upon that extraordinary evening in February of 2016 when his firmware appeared to crash in real time before a national television audience. Asked about his accomplishments in the Senate during a New Hampshire debate, Rubio retreated to the only sanctuary he knew, the memorized talking point. "Let's dispel once and for all with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing," he declared. "He knows exactly what he's doing." A serviceable enough line, perhaps, when deployed once. But Rubio, apparently unable to access any other portion of his operating system, repeated this identical phrase 4 times within minutes, even after Chris Christie observed with evident satisfaction. There it is, the memorized 25-second speech. There it is, everybody. Rubio revealed himself that night as what he has always been, a man of carefully rehearsed positions and nothing underneath. Christie's prosecutorial demolition of Rubio that evening was so thorough that protesters subsequently followed the Florida senator's campaign dressed in robot costumes. One labeled himself the Rubio Talking Points 3000. The mockery was cruel but not unfair. Rubio's entire political persona has been a performance of conviction without the inconvenience of actual beliefs. The appearance of principle maintained only until principle proves costly. He has the ideological consistency of a weather vane in a hurricane. The rewards for this servility have been considerable, at least by the degraded standards of Trump-era advancement. Rubio now holds more titles than a minor European princeling: Secretary of State, Acting National Security Advisor, Acting USAID Administrator, Acting Archivist of the United States. The New York Times has dubbed him the Secretary of Everything, though Secretary of Whatever You'd Like, Sir, might be more accurate. He has achieved the distinction of being the first person to hold the dual portfolios of Secretary of State and National Security Advisor since Henry Kissinger, a comparison that flatters Rubio enormously and insults Kissinger only slightly. Trump recently traveled to Jerusalem and, in praising Rubio's work on a ceasefire agreement, could not resist revisiting their former enmity. "We had some unbelievably good people working on this, and then you're going to add a man named Marco Rubio," Trump said. "He was tough. He was nasty," the audience laughed. One suspects Rubio did too. To be publicly humiliated by your master and smile through it is a particular kind of hell, especially when you chose it. The Democratic senators who voted to confirm Rubio 99-0 have begun issuing their regrets. "I regret that vote," Senator Chris Van Hollen has said, noting that, as a member of the Senate, Secretary Rubio was somebody who stood up for American values, American principles. Van Hollen observed that his former colleague acknowledged that Russia was the aggressor against Ukraine, a position Rubio has since abandoned with the rest of his prior convictions. Murphy, Van Hollen, and others extended Rubio a professional courtesy based on his Senate record, only to discover that the Rubio of the Senate was merely another costume to be discarded when fashion changed. What makes Rubio's degradation particularly melancholy is that it appears to be in pursuit of an object he will never obtain. The man quite evidently wishes to be president. Every genuflection before Trump, every abandonment of principle, every enthusiastic endorsement of policies he once condemned, all of it is calculated to position himself for 2028 or beyond. But the MAGA faithful possess a keen nose for authenticity, and they can distinguish between true believers and mere opportunists. Rubio will forever be Little Marco, the establishment Republican who said wicked things about their champion before discovering the error of his ways. His conversion will always carry the taint of convenience. He has sold his integrity for a prize that will likely never be his, the political equivalent of trading one's soul for a lottery ticket. Rubio is that saddest of political creatures, a man who has compromised everything and will gain nothing. There is, one must acknowledge, a certain professional competence to Rubio's current role. He speaks foreign policy jargon with fluency, navigates diplomatic complexities with reasonable skill, and manages to avoid the worst of the administration's clownish excesses. His former colleagues in the Senate respect his intellect, if not his character. But competent administration of an incoherent foreign policy is rather like being a skilled navigator on a ship whose captain keeps steering toward icebergs. What is the value of your expertise when it is deployed in service of America First isolationism, performative cruelty toward refugees, and the rehabilitation of dictators? One searches for the man Rubio used to claim to be the son of Cuban immigrants, raised to understand the horrors of strongman government, devoted to freedom and the American experiment. That man, if he ever existed, has been so thoroughly subordinated to ambition that he might as well have emigrated to another country. In his place stands a functionary who can watch his president berate the leader of Ukraine in the Oval Office and emerge to defend the performance, who can oversee the dismantling of USAID, an agency he once championed, and speak of bureaucratic efficiency, who can hear Trump joke about their former enmity and laugh along, the way courtiers have always laughed at the jests of kings, no matter how pointed the humor. The record is clear, the tapes exist. The words were spoken and cannot be unsaid. Marco Rubio told the American people that Donald Trump was a con artist, a vulgar embarrassment, a dangerous aspirant to power who would require endless justification from those foolish enough to support him. He was, on this matter, entirely correct. His subsequent career has been dedicated to proving that his own warning applied most accurately to himself. In the end, little Marco found his proper station, kneeling.